Since the first episode of Star Wars Playtime, I've thought about tackling Star Wars The Old Republic. It's tricky though, because it's still being updated and still going. How do you revisit something that has changed so much since its launch? How do you assess an ever-evolving MMO? What it was like day one is completely different to what it's like now. It's seriously boggling my mind how to tackle something that's this big and how to showcase this game. It's so huge, and while I've pretty much played everything that it has to offer, there are parts I don't play a lot for various reasons. The more I think about it, just the more insurmountable it becomes. So I'm going to stop thinking about it. SWTOR turns 10 very shortly, and this game deserves to be celebrated. It needs to be celebrated. And what better time to do it than for its 10th anniversary? Without further ado, I present to you this very special episode of Star Wars Playtime, Star Wars The Old Republic. Let's get into the game. It's hard to talk about SWTOR without talking about Star Wars Galaxies. I didn't get to play it when it was first around. I'd heard of it, but internet gaming wasn't really a thing for me back in 2003 when it was first launched, and it wasn't until 2006 that we got local servers in Australia. There were certain things that just didn't seem right to me about it. If you're making a Star Wars game with different classes, you have to include Force users. With Galaxies being set during the Galactic Civil War era, meaning around the original trilogy, Force users were few and far between. There was a way in the early versions of Galaxies to make your character into a Force user, but it required a lot of work, and even then you became a target for bounty hunters and the Empire. Eventually Jedi opened up as a class, but that just made things worse, with lots of Jedi running around in an era where they were virtually non-existent or in hiding. The Galactic Civil War is also a hard era for balance. With the Empire as big as it is, you'd expect it to wipe the floor with the Ragtag Rebellion in pretty much every engagement. So when it comes to things like player versus player, or PvP, how are you supposed to maintain that storyline when the devs are trying to balance the game so that no side feels overpowered? Like I said, I never got to play Galaxies myself, but from what I've heard from those that did, it was a fun game. Chris Inglis, Game on Oz's historian, wrote a piece on it for his MMORPG Memory Lane series. Reading about the unique health action mind system and how professions worked gives an insight into how the game played. Seeing how hard it was to become a Jedi in the original game makes sense from a lore point of view, but I can see how it was frustrating for players at the time trying to become Force sensitive, especially with how vague the developers were being about the process. On the opposite side of things, hearing how the new game enhancements, or NGE, let you choose Jedi as a profession is a swing too far the other way. SWTOR was announced in October 2008 and launched on the 20th of December 2011. Not wanting to split the player base between two Star Wars MMOs, Galaxies was shut down on the 15th of December 2011, with players making the most of their time in-game until the servers were switched off. Galaxies lives on though, through fan projects like SWG Legends and SWG MU, still available to this day. I didn't follow the development of SWTOR very closely. I knew there was a game coming set in a new part of the Star Wars timeline, somewhere between Knights of the Old Republic games and the prequels. At the time I didn't even know it was an MMO, or have any concept of what that meant. Sure, I knew World of Warcraft was an MMO, but had no idea of how that related to gameplay or story. Then the trailers started dropping, and I was hooked. The first trailer, Deceived, shows Sith Lord Darth Malgus walking into the Jedi Temple on Coruscant and proceeding to wreck the place. This was the sacking of Coruscant and showed that the Sith Empire were a force to be reckoned with, and the Republic needed to up their game. And up their game they did. The second trailer, Hope, showed the Republic fighting back on subjugated Alderaan, and features examples of different classes and many characters that would go on to feature in SWTOR's story. We got our first glimpse of Trooper Jace Malcolm, who would go on to become the Supreme Commander of the Republic's military, and Jedi Satil Shan, descendant of Bastila Shan and Revan from Knights of the Old Republic, and future Grand Master of the Jedi Order. Darth Malgus also made another appearance in an exciting and epic battle with SWTOR. The third and final pre-launch trailer, Return, was unleashed the year of SWTOR's own release, and showed the Sith Empire returning to its home world of Korriban and liberating it from the Republic. Darth Malgus featured again, as well as smuggler Nico Okkar. There was a whole raft of supporting media such as books, comics, and a video diary from Master Nostoral to guide you through this new section of a galaxy far, far away. I was super excited for SWTOR, and the beta would open my eyes to the world of MMOs. This is where the fun begins. I got into a weekend beta for SWTOR around September-October 2011. All 8 classes were available: Jedi Knight, Jedi Consular, Trooper and Smuggler for the Republic, and Sith Warrior, Sith Inquisitor and Imperial Agent and Bounty Hunter for the Empire. I'm a good guy at heart, so the Republic was always going to be my starting faction, and I was very tempted to roll a Jedi. I figured a lot of people would be doing that though, and instead went with a Trooper to see what it played like. The opening cutscene on Ord Mantell set the tone for warfare that was to follow. This was the game I was here for. I explored everything and picked up every mission that I could. This was my first taste of an MMO. For those that don't know, MMO is short for MMORPG, which itself is an acronym for Massively Multiplayer Online Role-Playing Game. The key word there being multiplayer. I took a long time to come to the online gaming scene. I've mainly been a single player or couch multiplayer person. So when I picked up a type of mission called Heroic X, the X indicating how many players you needed to finish the mission, I was blissfully unaware that I would need help. So I tried finishing these myself, attempting to drag just one enemy at a time. That didn't work though, and the whole mob of enemies just collapsed onto me. It took me a long time after the beta to realise that just because I picked up a mission didn't mean I had to finish it. Single player Jim hadn't yet grasped this truth and wanted to do everything. There were a couple of other harsh realities for me to grasp as well. One was that my PC at the time was right on the edge of being able to run SWTOR. I used to be mainly a console gamer because you could buy the console and be good for a few years, whereas a good PC is way more expensive than a console and requires upgrades. So my PC hadn't had a lot of attention. Combine that with my potato internet and it was in for a bad time. For the most part it didn't really matter as I was just playing against NPCs, so reactions weren't as critical as they were in something like PvP or harder content. Another thing I didn't realise was that Ord Mantell was just a starting planet for the Trooper. I never actually got off it in the beta. I must have played for hours that weekend and barely made a dent. The scope of SWTOR was ambitious and I was just all in for it. SWTOR officially launched worldwide on the 20th of December 2011. However, this was only really released in North America and Europe. That didn't stop people in other regions from being able to play it though. The Australian release date was the 1st of March 2012, but local game shops started importing the game for sale. That sounds nuts when I say it now, but that was the state of gaming in Australia then. Digital only titles were still catching on and people wanted physical copies. I was one of those people. I ordered my copy, and when I arrived I rushed home to install it. Of course, it promptly connected to the internet after installation and downloaded updates, but I've got my physical copy, damn it! Instead of going back to a Trooper, this time I went with a Jedi Knight. My Jedi Knight, Ganna. To this day, he is the favourite of all my characters and my ride or die main. Whenever new story content is released, Ganna is the first of my toons to experience it. The Jedi starting planet, Tython, had a much different feel to Ord Mantell. Even with the Treaty of Coruscant technically being a peace treaty, the galaxy was still full of conflict. Where Ord Mantell felt war-ravaged and every step a struggle, Tython was strangely calm and peaceful. It had its own internal problems, but the troubles of the wider galaxy were absent. But I had a lightsaber and an engaging story. And what a story it was! I didn't realise it at the time, but the storytelling in SWTOR is extremely unique. I've only ever played 3 MMOs, SWTOR, Final Fantasy XIV and New World, with the latter 2 only started this year, but I've yet to hear of one with more story options. Not only do dark and light side options affect your alignment, you can change story elements based on your actions. Ganna discovered this with the culmination of the original vanilla story on Corellia. There are story beats at various parts during the game where you have the option to either save or kill various NPCs. When gearing up for the end of the vanilla Jedi Knight story, these characters would return to help you. I found myself wondering what would happen if I'd killed them, and in a dark side Jedi Knight playthrough, I found out that killing them would just cause other NPCs to take their place, but I got such a kick out of seeing these characters return in the light side story and seeing my choices affect the story. It also had an effect on gameplay. Being an MMO, SWTOR has group content, the 4-player flashpoints or the 8 to 16-player operations. The first flashpoint you'll come across for the Republic is the Essels. There's a point where you need to unlock a door to the bridge. You can either choose to reset the reactor, which has the side effect of opening the engineering compartment to space and killing all the engineers inside, or shut down some secondary conduits, which takes a while but saves the engineers. If you choose the dark side option of resetting the reactor, you save time but kill the engineers, but choosing the light side option will save the engineers and take longer to complete. The original game has so much content. Each class has its own story. That's virtually 8 different games to play through, and with dark and light side options, that could potentially mean 16 different playthroughs to see the differences and what effect that has on the overall story. I, in fact, have 19 characters that have been taken through to the current level cap of 75, although not all of them have played through the latest story content just yet. There's my Imperial Agents, Notsil and Kansas City Shuffle, Bounty Hunters, Drebin and Bog Paper Cranium, Jedi Consulars Mel May and Park Lane, the previously mentioned Ganna and my namesake Straightjacket Jim are my Jedi Knights, Smugglers, Herr Albaran and Mijuli, Sith Inquisitors, Fitman, Vitorcus and Ziva David, Sith Warriors, Verity, Wylock, Hammerzite and Yenamade, and Troopers, Fanon and Vortsa. All but 3 of these names have origins in either Star Wars or other media. Can you guess which ones they are? Watch to the end for the answers. Leveling your characters through missions was pretty grindy at the beginning. You had to pick up every single player mission you could find, not just your class missions or the planetary quests. This gave you a more in-depth look at the galaxy, but delayed your passage through the game. There was also a chance to end up in an area that you weren't ready for. After you leave your faction's home planet, you're given the option to head to one of 2 planets, Nar Shaddaa or Taris for the Republic, or Nar Shaddaa or Balmorra for the Empire. On my first Republic playthrough, I chose to go to Nar Shaddaa because I thought it would be more interesting. What I didn't realise is that it's intended for the player to go to Taris first, as it's the lower level planet. I struggled through Nar Shaddaa, feeling like a pest because I kept asking other players for help. It wasn't until I got to Taris and saw that all the enemies were 5 or more levels below me that I'd realised what I'd done. At least getting through Taris was a breeze though. Leveling wasn't the only thing you had to pay attention to. Gearing is just as important. Each class has a main stat that they would need their gear to have: strength for Jedi Knights and Sith Warriors, aim for Troopers and Bounty Hunters, cunning for Smugglers and Imperial Agents, and willpower for Jedi Consulars and Inquisitors. Making sure your gear was suited to your class was key to succeeding. With such a focus on story and decisions, it was a joy to see the Legacy system. Legacy is a server-wide mechanic that links your characters. When your first character on a server reaches level 10, you can make a Legacy last name, the surname that all your characters will share. You can also set up a family tree to establish familial relations between them. Legacy was more than just a way to link your characters though. As you increase your Legacy level, you could unlock certain perks. A lot of these Legacy unlocks were unique to your characters, meaning you had to buy them for each character, and range from things like improved experience for specific actions like completing flashpoints or war zones, or doing class or space missions, or even just exploring. Boost to companion affection, decreased cooldowns for fast travel, and convenience perks like field repair droids, field mail droids, and field respecialization were also available. Those Legacy unlocks were per character, but some were global, like the reputation system. There are various organisations in SWTOR, separate to the Republic and the Empire, and you can build your reputation with them by doing various missions or by completing certain actions. As you earn reputation, you increase your reputation rank, unlocking titles and special armour sets available through reputation vendors. Some organisations are linked to events and only available to earn reputation during that event, such as Thorn during the Rakghoul Plague. Achievements are also available through the Legacy system. There are scores of things to do in SWTOR, and chances are that it counts towards your achievements. From exploration and flashpoints to daily areas, events and companions. You can work towards achievements for pretty much anything. Some of them also come with rewards such as in-game items and titles. One of the more powerful Legacy unlocks in the game is linked to each of the 8 classes and the Heroic Moment ability. Heroic Moment is already a useful ability as it recovers 2% of your maximum health every 3 seconds for a full minute, but combined with the Legacy system, it makes it even better. With each class that completes Chapter 3 of their story, a unique ability to that class is unlocked for all characters in your Legacy during Heroic Moment. If you've completed Chapter 3 for all 8 classes, it turns the Heroic Moment into a very dominant ability. There's a lot more you can do with Legacy. It's a great way to link your characters together and unlock perks to help you get through the game. If you hadn't noticed already, SWTOR takes heavy inspiration from Knights of the Old Republic, or KOTOR. Developers BioWare made the first KOTOR game and also created SWTOR. It was only natural for them to draw on what had come before that. So it was that SWTOR gives you companions. These are non-player characters that follow you around and act in one of the 3 main MMO roles, tank, DPS or healer. If treated well, they can become powerful allies in your fight, but each of them had their own reasons for joining you. There's a great variety in them. Imperial players don't just get evil Imperial companions, and the Republic don't get cookie-cutter good Republic ones either. My Jedi Knights have a Sith Lord for a companion, and my Sith Inquisitor has recruited a Jedi Padawan to their ranks. One of the more interesting companions is in the Sith Warrior story, where you can seduce an impressionable Jedi to the dark side, or show them that not all Sith are evil and convince them to join you and stay a Jedi. The reason I have 4 Sith Warriors is because of this particular companion. I needed both options twice. In the early days, companions were unique. Their abilities showcased their individuality, and they could only provide one of the 3 roles. You could make them better at their jobs by making story choices they agreed with, or giving them companion gifts. This raised their affection, and also unlocked missions where you could talk to them and find out more about them, where they came from, what they want, and in some cases, start a romance with them. Like the player character, companions also needed to be geared. This could sometimes be a hassle if you favoured a particular companion over another, like I did on my first Jedi Knight playthrough. The first companion you get is the droid T7. While he's a plucky R2-D2 sort of droid, he quickly made way for Kira Carson, and she eventually made way for Doc, who was the only healer in the base game for the Jedi Knight. In the last vanilla class mission, you're forced to take T7 into battle. T7, who I hadn't geared since I got Kira at level 16. There is a puzzle you could solve to give him some better gear in the last area, but I didn't know about that at the time and struggled with the last boss fight. Getting around was harder in the initial game as well. You leave your starting planet around level 10 and your faction's homeworld around level 16. In the beginning, the speeder piloting skill didn't unlock until 25. That was a serious portion of the game without the ability to get around fast on a mount. The sprint ability even had to be unlocked at a certain level as well. Then there were the taxi and fast travel points. Scattered around the various planets were taxi points where you could pay a small number of credits and enjoy being driven to a set destination. At launch, you had to discover each of these points first, meaning you had to walk to each location, click on the taxi, and that leg of the taxi network would be unlocked. Same with fast travel points. These were normally located near the taxi points and needed to be clicked to be activated. On my first playthrough for the Republic and the Empire, I loved exploring the new planets and finding everything, picking up every mission, and that made the experience super enjoyable. But on each successive character, that wonder slowly ebbed away. Apart from the class missions, all the other missions were the same, and where I was enwrapped with the glorious voiceover work for every cutscene was fully voiced, especially that mission on Drum and Cass where an officer thought his subordinates were planning to kill him, so he killed them first, but really they were planning a surprise birthday party for him. That sensation dwindled on successive characters, and I was hitting the spacebar hard to skip them. I love the stories contained in SWTOR, and it wasn't limited to the class, planetary and side missions. They were also told in the game's group content, known as flashpoints and operations. Players were introduced to flashpoints early in the game after leaving their starting planet and arriving at the fleet. You get a choice of either taking a shuttle directly to your faction's homeworld or to board priority transport, which is either the Essels for the Republic or Black Talon for the Empire. Both of these flashpoints introduced the players to Grand Moff Kilran, an Imperial leader with a reoccurring role in these flashpoints. While each of the early flashpoints are self-contained, there is a slight narrative thread woven into them, with Grand Moff Kilran at its centre. It's another example of SWTOR storytelling at its finest. There were approximately 13 flashpoints at launch, with the majority of those being available to both the Republic and Imperial, but there are a series of flashpoints exclusive to each faction. The aforementioned Essels and Black Talon, as well as Taral 5 and Maelstrom Prison for the Republic, and Boarding Party and the Foundry for the Empire. SWTOR didn't launch with a group finder, so it wasn't uncommon to see players milling about the mission givers for flashpoints, trying to find groups to run with. SWTOR released 4 operations in its first year: Terror from Beyond, Explosive Conflict, Karaga's Palace, and Eternity Vault. This is where my own experience fell down. I didn't want to join a guild, and I didn't want to have to turn the game into being an obligation to show up to regular raids. That left trying to join a random group when I wanted to play through an operation, and that meant standing around Fleet for an hour or more, waiting for someone to say they were looking for a DPS and general chat, then sitting around even longer waiting to fill out the other spots in the group. And if I'm being honest, they scared me. Operations had mechanics to the fight, and it wasn't just a typical tank and spank sort of a fight. I didn't know them, and I didn't want to upset other players by being that bloody noob. It wasn't until a few years after launch that I seriously attempted an operation. To date, SWTOR has had 5 story expansions and 2 feature expansions. The first expansion was Rise of the Hutt Cartel, launched on the 14th of April 2013, 16 months after SWTOR's launch. Expanding on story points from the Operation Karaga's Palace, the Hutt Cartel have declared themselves a major player in the galaxy with the possession of the powerful Isotope 5. Both the Republic and the Empire want it and come to the planet of Makeb. It also increased the level cap from 50 to 55. The first standalone feature update was released on the 4th of February 2014, Galactic Starfighter. This was something the player base had been demanding since the on-rail space missions of the vanilla game. SWTOR had finally introduced some PvP space combat. Giving players different starfighter options with different upgrades meant that we could build something that suited our gameplay. Later in 2014, we were also treated to the Galactic Strongholds update. Players now had the opportunity to purchase their own little plot of land and decorate it however they wanted. Galactic Strongholds launched with a range of different strongholds available for purchase among different planets, as well as items such as storage that you could put items into if you wanted to keep but didn't need on you right away. It also included a legacy storage option that all your other characters could access as a way to share items and credits. With a banger of a title like Knights of the Old Republic behind them, BioWare couldn't resist exploring more of that story with the Shadow of Revan expansion in December 2014, raising the level cap to 60 and introducing new planets Rishi and Yavin 4, as well as Zyos in an epilogue to this expansion / prologue to the next. Shadow of Revan is by far my favourite SWTOR expansion to date. Rishi is amazing, and visiting Yavin 4 with its lush jungles felt like I just stepped straight into a new hope. The way the expansion initially ends is amazing too. You can either choose to complete Operation Temple of Sacrifice or go the single player route and complete missions to aid the settlement before starting a solo fight against a powerful foe with the aid of NPCs. Giving the players a choice to either play group content or to play solo to finish it was a great addition. After the release of Shadow of Revan, an update added the planet Zyos to the game. It starts off as an Imperial city, much like Cast City on Drummond Cast, but by the end of the story, it's completely wiped out and turned to ash, and it becomes another daily area. But where the daily area missions in other places involve holding back an enemy army, Zyos is very melancholy. You're exploring the death of the planet and walking through its bones. It's part of why I love Shadow of Revan so much. The 4 lead-in flashpoints do a great job of establishing a mystery, Rishi is an amazing locale, part Smuggler's Cove, part Wild Jungle, and Yavin Fort is Wild Jungle. And exploring Zyos first as a city and then as a wasteland is a very memorable journey. It struck the perfect balance between group and solo content. Various updates over the years introduced story mode flashpoints. These flashpoints that BioWare deemed important to the overall story, and for the first experience, players can play solo, making getting into the prelude to Shadow of Revan flashpoints easier. It also marked a turning point in group versus solo gaming in SWTOR. Knights of the Fallen Empire was a massive shake-up for a few different reasons. First, you didn't need to buy this expansion separately. As long as you were subscribed, you got access to this content as well as all the previous released expansions. This is a trend that has continued in SWTOR to this day, with the new expansions being available free to subscribers. It also marked a very different way of telling the story. Knights of the Fallen Empire is told in chapters, with the first 9 releasing on the 27th of October 2015, and the remaining 7 chapters drip-fed to players on a month-to-month basis. It also stripped away your companions, bringing some of them back and introducing new characters in each chapter. But it wasn't just your class companions that were returning. Companions from other class stories were soon appearing in your companion list, the first being the Jedi Knight's droid companion, T7, now available to everyone. Upon completion of Chapter 9, you also got Alliance alerts, which were opportunities to recruit other companions to your cause. As you played through the remaining chapters, more and more companions became available through playing the chapters and through Alliance alerts. If the companion was previously one of your class companions and you had gained enough affection with them, you could skip some parts of the missions to recruit them, and you were also given the option to refuse or even kill some of them. Knights of the Fallen Empire introduced new group content called Uprisings. These were designed to be quick group missions that should take about 10 minutes or so to do. Shorter than flashpoints, the idea was to give players something they can jump into and finish speedily. To keep players interested and subscribed, BioWare introduced monthly subscriber bonuses for Knights of the Fallen Empire. If you were subscribed at the time a chapter was released, you would get a special item. If you were subscribed for the full release of the expansion, you got access to an additional story mission. This is a controversial move, as it's generally accepted that you shouldn't lock story content behind a limited time or paid offer, but it's now available on the cartel market. A year later, on the 2nd of December 2016, the Eternal Empire story was concluded in Knights of the Eternal Throne. Increasing the level cap from 65 in Knights of the Fallen Empire to 70, this expansion continued the same style of storytelling as its predecessor by releasing 9 new chapters. I was hoping for more chapters like the Fallen Empire story, but it felt like the backlash from fans unhappy with how that expansion had turned out was too big to ignore, and they developed Eternal Throne to quickly tie up those loose ends. More companions were also returned, but where Fallen Empire gave companions to all classes, a lot of Eternal Throne's returning companions only went to the classes they were originally available for. To date, only 2 of the original class companions have not returned. Tano Vic from the Trooper story and Zenith from the Jedi Consular story. Tano Vic did make an appearance in Chapter 6 of Knights of the Fallen Empire, but it is not likely to return, with Vic's voice actor David Anthony Pizzuto passing away in 2012. It seems the character has been retired. Zenith, on the other hand, has made an appearance quite recently in the latest expansion, but is yet to return as a companion. Something had to be done about the power gathered by the player character and their alliance, which happened in the traitor storyline. Starting on the artificial world of Iakath, where you learn of a traitor in your midst, and continuing through the flashpoints Crisis on Umbara, a traitor among the Chiss, and the concluding in the Nathema conspiracy, this plot resolves a threat to the Alliance while also moving the story back to a more Republic versus Imperial vibe. In the closing of Knights of the Eternal Throne expansion, the update Jedi Under Siege was released, returning a number of as-yet missing companions and also confirming the return of Darth Malgus, a fan-favourite adversary thought killed in the vanilla endgame content. The end of Jedi Under Siege also allows players to become a saboteur and secretly join the opposing faction. This has some story implications, with little interludes giving you a chance to deflate the morale of the faction you were undermining as a saboteur. Knights of the Eternal Throne also saw a change in how endgame gearing was done. Up until this point, if you wanted the best gear, you had to run operations to get a chance at some high level gear dropping. That changed here with the introduction of Command XP. I love this sort of system. It gives players the choice to play their way. Anything you do once you've reached the level cap earned you Command XP, and once you had earned enough, you would level up. This would drop a box that had a chance to drop some level gear appropriate for you. The higher your command rank, the better the gear you had a chance at getting. Now you could do whatever you wanted, whether that be operations, heroics or flashpoints, and still be working towards the best set of gear. That brings us to the latest SWTOR expansion, Onslaught, which was released just over 2 years ago on the 22nd of October 2019. Both the Republic and the Empire are still recovering from being decimated by the Eternal Empire and are slowly starting to rebuild. The Republic is rebuilding their fleet in the Meridian complex on Corellia, and the Sith Empire obviously wants to destroy it. The Republic travels to Onderon while the Empire stages an attack on the Republic fleet there that's heading to defend the Meridian complex. Then we also head to Mek Shah to secure fuel for the Republic fleet heading to the Meridian complex while the Imperials try to sabotage it. This culminates in the Flashpoint Object Meridian, where you're either defending the station or trying to destroy it. It also allows for you to disrupt the efforts of your faction if you chose the SWTOR option in Jedi Under Siege. Either way, Object Meridian finishes with a warning that an old foe may be returning. This is resolved in the Echoes of Oblivion story update, which ties up the final loose end from the Fallen Empire / Eternal Throne expansions and puts a little bow on it. There are also 2 additional flashpoints. Spirit of Vengeance starts a new story of unrest in the Mandalorians, while Secrets of the Enclave sees you chasing Darth Malgus to the old Jedi Enclave on Dantooine, who's seeking secrets thought to be hidden there, setting up the new expansion to be released later this year. That's a very brief overview of where SWTOR began. It's been a hell of a journey, and the game has gone through so many changes and updates from where it started. I had to do a lot of reading and research to jog my memory about the thoughts and feelings I had for the base game and subsequent releases, purely because it's been around so long. When it launched, SWTOR had servers all around the world. There were 3 types of servers: Player versus Environment, or PvE, PvP, and PvE Roleplay. As you can imagine, that's a lot of servers to maintain globally. The Asia Pacific region, or APAC for short, also had these. Living in Australia, I played on Dalbora, the APAC PvE server. I never understood why there were 3 different servers that split the player population. Maybe PvE and PvP should be kept separate, but with the server populations already low and server mergers over the year abolishing the different types of servers, I really wanted them to merge the APAC servers into one big one. In March 2013, just weeks before the release of Rise of the Hutt Cartel, BioWare announced that they would be closing the APAC servers and transferring players to North American servers. It breaks my heart because this move means that I now have to play SWTOR with 300 millisecond ping standard. That means it takes 1/3 of a second for my actions to reach the server, and 1/3 of a second for anything that happens, like enemies attacking, to be shown to me. I can't play hard mode content because by the time I've seen something, it's already happened and I'm dead. It's also why I avoid a lot of the group content in SWTOR like flashpoints and operations. I don't want to drag other players down because I can't talk to the server fast enough. With the evolution of PvP, PvE and PvE roleplay only servers, I would love to see BioWare bring back at least one APAC server. By far the biggest change to SWTOR is the free-to-play model. I'm not sure where the idea first originated, but the way BioWare implemented it is genius. It wasn't perceived that way in the beginning though. Free-to-play was seen as where MMOs go to die, and coming less than a year after the launch, players were worried. It's been almost 9 years since it went live though, so I think we can say that free-to-play has worked for SWTOR. When it comes to how players access the game, there is the aforementioned free-to-play option, the subscriber option, and the somewhere in between preferred option. Obviously BioWare wants you to pay for the game, so subscribing gets you everything. And when I say everything, I mean everything. Subscribers get access to all the latest content for their monthly fee, including new expansions. They are virtually unrestricted in the access they have to features and game modes. They level 20% faster, have no limits on how many operations and PvP battles they can take part in. They work towards endgame gear. They even have more options when it comes to the number of characters, customizations, and user interface options they have. Honestly, there are so many I just can't list them all in this video. Free-to-play offers players a chance to experience the game without having to put any money down. You can play through the original base game, all 8 different class stories, as well as the first 2 expansions, Rise of the Hutt Cartel and Shadow of Revan. There are some limits to what you can do though. You can only get to level 60, which is the level cap in Shadow of Revan. You can also only have a maximum of 1,000,000 credits. You can't run operations and have a limit to the number of PvP battles you can do a week. Since you can only go to level 60, you can't gain access to systems like endgame gearing, as that doesn't kick in until you hit the level cap, which is currently 75. It also takes you longer to gain the sprint ability, level 10 versus level 1 for subs, and also mounts, which is level 25 versus level 10 for subs. You're also limited to the number of crew skills you can have at once. Free-to-play is restrictive by design, as it aims to give players a taste of the full experience without giving it away for free. There is a middle ground for those that have either spent more than $5 on the game or have been subscribed previously, called Preferred. Preferred players have more access than free-to-play, but not as much as subscribers. With subscribers gaining access to all the expansions, Preferred players will have access to all the expansions that were available the last time they subbed. Meaning if you haven't subscribed since Knights of the Eternal Throne expansion was released, you'll be able to play everything up until that point, but you won't be able to play Onslaught. Endgame gearing is limited as well, with Preferred players only being able to access it if they got to max level while being subscribed. There's a lot more there, but it gets fairly complicated. If you'd like to know more, I'd advise googling SWTOR free-to-play and looking up SWTORista's guide to the system. It contains a very in-depth explanation of the differences between free-to-play, preferred and subscribed access. SWTOR went free-to-play just under a year after launch, with the Cartel Market going live at the same time. The Cartel Market is a store where players can spend real-world money on cosmetic items and other things like experience buffs to aid them in-game. Free-to-play and preferred players can also purchase unlockables to get content unavailable to them. Group content has undergone some changes as well. A group finder was introduced, which stopped general chat being spammed with LFG messages. Another benefit of this was that you could go on doing whatever you wanted to do while you waited for the group to pop. I haven't played a lot of PvP in either the Warzone or Galactic Starfighter flavours, but I'm aware of tweaks and changes here and there that have been made over the years, even if I don't specifically know what they are. Different modes of Warzones were introduced, varying from the kill everything deathmatch type to objective based, such as holding capture points, attacking or defending objectives, and even a sports type Warzone called Huttball. Perhaps the biggest changes over the years to the group content have been to flashpoints. These 4-person missions started off requiring a tank, a healer, and 2 DPS, but tanks and healers were in high demand. As a DPS, you could wait a very long time for a group to pop. Tactical flashpoints were introduced to combat this. Tactical flashpoints could be completed by any makeup of characters. You could do them with 4 DPS. Hell, you could do them with 4 healers if you really wanted to. It made for quicker pop times and made it easier to get into flashpoints. Hard mode flashpoints upped the difficulty. They required a certain level of gearing, and your gear had better be augmented to give you that extra edge. Because of this added difficulty, a tank, a healer and 2 DPS group makeups were once again required. Story mode flashpoints were introduced to help players complete flashpoints that the devs considered important to the story. In the lead up to the release of Shadow of Revan, 4 flashpoints were released called the Prelude to the Shadow of Revan. They had key story information for Shadow of Revan, but if you wanted to play these after all the hype from the release of this expansion had died down, you could find it hard to get a group together for it. Initially, I didn't play these flashpoints as they came out, during my I'm a solo player phase. So I missed the information these flashpoints had. Enter story mode flashpoints. These let you play the flashpoint for the first time on your own so you could experience the story. Any subsequent playthroughs would be in a group as a tactical flashpoint. Story is such a huge part of SWTOR. The big appeal of the vanilla release was that there was 8 different stories to play through, and even though the planetary missions and side quests were the same for subsequent playthroughs, I still think it had so much to offer story-wise. I felt robbed of potential ongoing stories when the planet Ilum was released as part of vanilla endgame content, and we went from having those 8 unique storylines to just having 2, one for each faction. And even those finished with the same 2 flashpoints. Rise of the Hutt Cartel continued the 2 faction storyline, but Prelude to Shadow of Revan flashpoints transitioned to a single storyline with subtle differences to account for player choices in the vanilla game. The single storyline continued through Knights of the Fallen Empire and Knights of the Eternal Throne, before moving back to a Republic vs Empire dual storyline with Onslaught. Part of me understands this. The longer SWTOR goes on, the harder to track these story branches it must be. I imagine there is some hugely complex choice tree somewhere at BioWare to track all these, especially when it comes to killing companions or NPCs. Choice is also a problem. Sometimes you feel like you're being railroaded into a choice for story reasons, rather than choosing to do something that your character would do. A key one that gets held up as an example of this is in the Sith Warrior vanilla story. One of your companions betrays you. If you're playing Darkside, that fool would be lying in 2 on the ground, but the game forces you to keep them around. There is a returning companion mission in Knights of the Eternal Throne where you finally get your chance to give him the glowy end of the lightsaber, but it's still annoying that the player is forced into that choice when the character themselves would have killed that companion. SWTOR has also streamlined the process of leveling through playing the story missions. Now you can just do the class and planetary missions, and you will level at an appropriate pace. You don't need to do those side missions to keep up. Companions are another point of contention with the player base. They started out as unique additions, their abilities and behaviours added to the story. Since Knights of the Fallen Empire, companions have become so bland that I really don't have a preference to which one I use. The main thing that influences which companion I use is if I want a melee or a ranged companion fighting by my side, or if I've maxed out their affection rating, making them more proficient in combat. Here's the thing about a lot of the changes though. Most of them are good individually, but over time have just added to companions becoming homogenized. Companion stats are now linked to player stats, meaning you don't have to pay attention to gear anymore, other than keeping your companions dressed in the latest of fashionable outfits, darling. You can also choose whether you want them to play tank, DPS or healer role, meaning you can get a lot more freedom in which companion you want to use. And there are so many to choose from. Knights of the Fallen Empire making companions from other classes available inflated the pool, and that's before you even take into account the ones that are available on the cartel market or that have been added to the game through various expansions and updates. One of the main things that uses lots of companions is the crafting, or crew skills. Subscribers can deploy up to 8 companions on crew skill missions to retrieve goods for crafting or to do the crafting, with free-to-play and preferred players being able to deploy less. That does feel criminally low for the amount of companions that are currently available. My Jedi Knight Ganna currently has 53 companions to choose from. What's the point of recruiting all these companions if there's no real use for them? I'd very much like to see an increase in the number of companions you can send on crew skill missions to make these companions feel more needed. I'd also like to see some sort of companion rewards track, where you get rewards for doing certain missions with certain companions. The Sith Inquisitor companion Kemval is recruited on Korriban. Make it so the rewards track asks you to go and do missions with him there. Just have something to make it feel like I didn't waste my time recruiting all these companions. One of the greatest improvements in terms of getting around is the changes to mounts, fast travel and taxis. Where you had to discover all the taxis in the vanilla game, now all the taxi points are unlocked as soon as you get to a planet. You still have to discover the quick travel points, but where before you had to click on them, and thus had the possibility of missing them, now they were activated by proximity. You can even buy legacy unlocks to reduce the cooldown of the quick travel ability. I often forget what having to play with quick travel cooldowns was like in the early days, because I just don't have them anymore. The level for acquiring mounts has also been brought down. There's a sliding scale for subscribers, preferred players or free-to-play players, with subscribers able to access mounts from level 10, meaning as soon as you're ready to leave your starting planet, you can learn the speeder piloting ability and purchase a mount. One of the most recent updates to SWTOR is the Galactic Seasons update. I really like this one as it has given me a reason to log in and do things. Similar to a battle pass type system, there are daily and weekly missions that give points on a reward track to unlock, well, rewards. Free to play and preferred players are able to participate, but subscribers get access to more rewards. I really like that it forces me to do content I don't normally do, like PvP and Starfighter. Being compelled to play parts of the game I don't normally might sound like a bad thing, but sometimes you need to be forced to try something to be reminded that you actually like it. SWTOR has a rolling calendar of events. It changes things up and keeps players interested. From the plague-themed Rakghoul Resurgence, rotating between the planets of Alderaan, Corellia and Tatooine, to the relics of the Gree on the ice world of Ilum, there's plenty to do. Bounty hunting, swoop racing and gambling events are also available at certain times. SWTOR even has a Life Day event, the Star Wars version of Christmas. These events come and go, and come again, but there's one event that I love because of how many different things it made me try. It took me out of my comfort zone and made me play parts of the game I wouldn't normally play. That event was Dark vs. Light. Dark vs. Light was a once-off event in 2016, ending just before the Knights of the Eternal Throne expansion launched. The key mechanic of it was that all new characters started during the event would contribute points towards either the dark side or the light side by alignment decisions, hence why the event was called Dark vs. Light. It was a literal battle between the alignments, and the winner would decide if Darth Hexed or Master Ranos would join you as a companion. There were 6 levels of rewards: Heroic, Legacy, Valiant, Champion, Eternal and Legendary, each with their own achievements and objectives. To receive the companion reward, you needed to complete the Eternal level of rewards. Heroic was where you began. Start a new character during Dark vs. Light and level it to 25. Doesn't matter how you do it, just do it. Easy. Legacy took it a step further, where you needed to get a character started during Dark vs. Light to level 50 and complete 3 specific flashpoints. Valiant had you completing the Shadow of Revan, chapters 1 to 9 of Knights of the Fallen Empire, as well as purchasing a stronghold, all with a character started during Dark vs. Light. Champion was where it started to get tricky and time consuming. You needed to complete chapters 1 to 16 of Knights of the Fallen Empire and reach level 5 in Valor, the experience you got playing the 8 vs 8 PvP war zones. Then you also had to complete 21 different tactical flashpoints. Eternal toned it down a bit with the requirement to take a Republic and Imperial character started during Dark vs. Light to level 65, beating round 5 in the newly released Eternal Championship, a challenging solo or group content with interesting combat mechanics designed to test your limits as a player. This was also the reward level you needed to complete to gain the companion at the end of the event. The final and hardest reward level to complete was the Legendary level. The easier things you needed to do for this was to complete the post-Shadow of Revan story on Ziost, complete the Eternal Championship by beating round 10, defeat a certain number of enemies during the Relics of the Gree and Rakghoul Resurgent events, as well as infecting other players during the Rakghoul Resurgent event as well, defeating NPCs in the Daily Oricron area, defeating world bosses on Quesh, Hoth, Belsavis, Alderaan and Ziost, maxing out all crafting skills, playing 5 Warzone and 5 Galactic Starfighter matches, earning and spending 1,000,000 credits, collecting the 5 new Datacrons hidden in the game, all with characters created during the Dark vs. Light event. Getting the companion HK-51 was required for Legendary as well, which involved a complex series of activities across both Imperial and Republic characters. Or if you'd already done that on a character pre-Dark vs. Light, you could unlock him via the Legacy system. Guess which one I did? You also had to level all 8 classes to level 50, which isn't as onerous as it sounds. By the time you got to this stage, you would most likely have completed and received the Legacy, Valiant and Champion achievements. Each of these contained parts of an armor set that increased your XP gain by 50% when worn. And with already having had to take an Imperial and Republic character to 65 in Eternal, getting a character to Dark 5 or Light 5 alignment should be pretty straightforward as well. There were 5 operations bosses that needed to be defeated, but these weren't always the end boss, and raid groups were forming for the express purpose of killing them and disbanding as soon as that was done. The thing that killed me though were the hard mode flashpoints. 26 of them to be precise. I had never played one before this, and it was grueling. Trying to gear characters for it while also trying to rush to complete the event did not make for a good time. I got so close to finishing it though. In fact, I was only one hard mode flashpoint away. The Battle of Rishi is a notoriously difficult hard mode flashpoint. The process of trying to complete it is the only time I've ever experienced rage in SWTOR, both from me and directed at me. And it's sad because it was a technical limitation that was creating that rage. The final fight has a lot of attacks that need quick reflexes to avoid, but being in Australia, playing on a North American server, and my ping being over 300 milliseconds, I couldn't physically move quick enough to respond because by the time I was responding, it had already happened and I was dead. It's disappointing because having Australian servers would have fixed this. But that was one tiny black spot on an event that I really enjoyed. I found that I really liked modes like Warzones and Galactic Starfighter, and getting to experience some more operations made me happy as well. It took me out of my comfort zone and showed me that there was much more to SWTOR than what I had been doing. For the record, the light side won this battle, and all players that completed the Eternal Rewards level received the companion Master Ranos after the event ended. Darth Hexa didn't go to waste though, as she was made available as a reward for an achievement at a later date. I love SWTOR. It has so many elements that I just have so much fun playing, and it keeps me coming back for more. The Star Wars setting may have been what got me into playing SWTOR, but the game has so many different facets to it and so many different things you can do. You can play your own way and be rewarded for it. You want to do heroics? Do it. You like PvP? Go ahead and gank those Republic scum or dirty Imperials. Like your rewards? Get stuck into Galactic Seasons. There's so much you can do without spending a cent. Free to play is an incredible model, and when subbing gets you everything, why wouldn't you do that, at least for, a little bit? I am so excited for the future of SWTOR. The changes to classes with the move to combat styles has me salivating for the next expansion, Legacy of the Sith, which releases very soon. Force-using characters will have access to all the Force-wielding classes, and all tech-based characters will be able to access all the tech-based classes, including those from the opposing faction. It's an amazing addition to the game and separates story from classes and gives more choice to the player. Story-wise, I can't wait to see what Darth Malgus is up to, although at some point I would like to see a Republic-based villain. Chancellor Thoresh was kind of like that, but she never had a prominent role as an antagonist, more a thorn in our collective side. We've had Hutz as a third-party villain, but the internal empire was led by the Imperial Emperor, who had gotten bored of the Republic versus Empire conflict. Mandalorians are coming in as a threat as well, but I'd like to see a long-term Republic villain to rival Malgus. I debated whether or not I was going to give SWTOR a rating, as the game conditions change from year to year, but even with the downturns over the years, I've always enjoyed the core of SWTOR. So join me in wishing SWTOR a happy 10th anniversary as I give the Old Republic my Star Wars playtime rating of I know. Thank you so much for watching. This is without a doubt the biggest episode of Star Wars playtime to date. I love doing these so much and have been slowly but surely adding to my Star Wars game collection to make sure I can keep going for a while yet. Do you remember the question I asked towards the beginning of the video? The one about the names for my characters and which ones were inspired by Star Wars and other media? To jog your memory, there's Imperial Agents Notsil and Kansas City Shuffle, Bounty Hunters Drebin and Bog Paper Cranium, Jedi Consulars Mel May and Park Lane, Jedi Knights Ganna and Straightjacket Jim, Smugglers Hair Owl Baron and Me Julie, Sith Inquisitor Fitman, Victorcus and Ziva David, Sith Warriors, Verity, Wylock, Hammerzite and Yenar Mate, and Troopers Fannin and Vortza. Well, here's where those names came from. Notsil is named for Lara Notsil, a character in the Star Wars Wraith Squadron series of books. Kansas City Shuffle was named for a con from the movie The Wrong Man, known as Lucky Number 11 outside of Australia, with Josh Hartnett and Lucy Liu. Drebin is named for Frank Drebin from the Naked Gun movies and also the Police Squad TV show. Bog Paper Cranium is named for the name Toilet Paper Head that Robot Chicken gave the bounty hunter Dengar in one of their Star Wars specials. Mel May is named after Melinda May, a character on the TV show Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Park Lane is named for Landon Park Lane from the Thursday Next series of books. Ganna is named after Ganna Rysode from the Star Wars New Jedi Order books. Kerr Albaran is named for the episode of The Simpsons where Homer becomes the Beer Baron. I tried getting Beer Baron in there, but the game name thing didn't like it. Mijuli is named for what Sacha Baron Cohen's character Ali G used to call his girlfriend. Fitman is the same species as Kit Fisto from the Star Wars prequels, so he's named after him. Ziva David is named for the character of the same name from the TV show NCIS. Wylock is named for Darth Wylock from the Star Wars Legacy comic series. Yeah, nah, mate, came from watching way too much Aussie Man reviews on YouTube. You should go watch him, he's very funny. Fannin is named for Ton Fannin from the Star Wars Wraith Squadron books. And finally, Vortza is named after Piggy Vortza Binring, also from the Wraith Squadron books. That leaves Straightjacket Jim, which is my namesake, Verity, which was from the SWTOR random name generator, and Hammerzite, a username I used for a little bit, that aren't from any media. Thanks again for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It helps the channel out, and I'll see you on the next episode of Star Wars Playtime.